Hello paper crafters, I'm Sunny Sky and I have got a fun double hidden heart card for you today. I'm going to teach you how to create just half the heart from your die and not cut the other half out using some Glimmer paper, and on the center you'll see this watercolor wash created directly on our acrylic block using our stamp pads. It should be fun. Let's get started. Here's all the cardstock that you will need. Mostly it's just scraps big enough for the heart-shaped die cuts that you're going to use. This is our full card. I did get 2 from a 12 sheet of cardstock, but I cut them down to 5.5 tall so that you can get them into a standard size envelope. And we do need a small piece of scrap that you're going to use some Sizzix adhesive sheet with, and then a scrap specifically for our watercolor wash heart-shaped background. We're going to start with the watercolor wash background first because that does need some time to dry. So you're going to take your acrylic block and put it into your lightest ink pad. This is Blushing Bride, and because of the shape of the heart and the size of the block, I'm going diagonally with the way that I'm putting it in there. So I've covered about half the block with Blushing Bride. Now I'm going to take and I'm going to cover the bottom half, overlapping slightly, with Calypso Coral. And then I'm going to just take like the bottom fourth and add a little bit of Real Red. So I've got 3 layers of color. Remember, you go light to dark so that you don't mess up your ink pads. And then just take some water or alcohol. I'm using my Stampin' Mist and water, and spritz your block a couple of times. And that's just to moisten up your wash there. Press it down and hold it for a minute, and that just allows the color to spread over that cardstock. And this is going to need several minutes to dry. So you're just going to let it dry. This block you just rinse off in the sink, of course. I'm going to let that dry. I've got one here that's already dry. And then what I did is take my black ink pad, get my greeting, and I'm going to stamp it in the center here. And this is from the Love You to Pieces stamp set that also has the puzzle that we're using on this card. And then just get your die, and you're going to line this up diagonally on the paper so that the deepest part is in the center of the, is in the base of the heart, in the tip or the point of the heart. And so I'll just line it up just like that so the words fit in there. Actually, you may want to cut it out first before you stamp on it, just to make sure you've got it in the right spot of your heart. Okay, so take your full sheet of cardstock, and you're going to take your heart and line it up with a score line that's 2 inches from the edge. And you're going to line the seam of the heart right on that score. And then take some washi tape so that you can attach it down so it will stay in position. Now we're only wanting to cut a portion of this heart, just the outside edge. And so we've got our sandwich here, our magnetic platform, one cutting plate and another cutting plate. The part that is covered by the cutting plate is going to cut. So I'm going to bring this top cutting plate, and I'm not covering the whole sheet of cardstock. I'm simply cutting up to the line where I want to cut. I'll run it all the way through, but here it won't cut because there's no pressure here because there's no cutting plate on the top. Now don't make the mistake of cutting this way, because if you do that, you're going to get the cut on this side of the cardstock rather than on the edge, and for this card we want it to be on the outside. You can also turn it around this way and do the cutting plate like this, but I find this difficult because you're trying to get it started, keep the cutting plate exactly where you want it, and there's nothing for it to grab onto. So if you will turn it this way so that the part you're cutting is going in first, then you can extend this cutting plate. I'm scooting it part way through the cutter. That way I can line it up. There's something already under the cutter. As soon as I get the rest of the mat underneath and I start getting that resistance, you know, then that handle starts turning, then you can cut it all the way through. And let's pull this out. my washi tape off. It is trying to pull a little of the cardstock. If you want to make the washi tape less sticky, stick it on your clothes. Get some fibers from your clothes. It'll make it a little less sticky. Then you won't have an issue there. But since this is the sample, I'm not too worried about it. Now, you see half this heart is cut out. The other half is not. Now, I want to get rid of this cardstock on the outside edge. I don't need that portion. I'm going to cut right along the seam, right along that score line. And I'm going to get rid of that piece. But before I toss that piece in the garbage, because it's not really big enough to do anything else with, what I want to do is take it over to the other side that I have not cut yet. I've flipped it, and I've seen where it's lining up along there. This way I can get my hearts on both sides to match up, because otherwise they might not be centered from top to bottom. So I'm just fitting in this, the grooves of the die into that piece of cardstock that's already been cut. You can see I've got that cardstock lined up along the edge. Tape that back up again. Now I'm just going to remove this, take it out of the way. You really could cut with it still in the way, but I want to just take it out of the way. Okay, so I'm going to run it back through the other way. Remember, I'm going to have the cut edge towards the center so that it cuts first. Only bringing my top cutting mat to that score, the other part of that cardstock. You can see I was not totally lined up there. It's cut in just a little bit. Not really a big problem. Now we do have score lines here, and I'm not planning to fold this card on those score lines, but I'm going to cover it with layers. Let me show you my finished one. So you can see a little bit of the score line there, but we've got our layers in there. Okay. Now, if you did want to make a different shape card, I've made an alternate one here where I did fold this back, bend them back. So this card is your double hidden shape. Okay. This one, instead of it being folded that way or unfolded, I've just bent back the sides. And this is now a gatefold card with some handles. Okay, so we have this one heart that is part of this stamp, and there's a matching die that turns it into 4 pieces. Can you see that? That's 4 separate pieces of heart there. I've used that heart on this card and broken out one piece, separated a little bit, and I used that watercolor wash background on both, just made different focal points on the end of the card. So when you're doing this little puzzle piece feature here, those are really tiny areas to try and glue. You try and get adhesive on these little innies and outies on the edge of the puzzle pieces. It's just hard to get it to stick down really well. So that's where your Sizzix adhesive sheets come in very handy. These come in 6x12 sheets. And you're going to take off the adhesive layer on the one side, and it is a little tough to get it. When you have the full 6x12 sheet, there is a little tab on the end that makes it easier to peel off, but when you're using a small piece like this, that isn't there anymore. Okay, so you're going to take this adhesive off. That is done. That's just the cover of it. So you just put that in the trash can. Put your adhesive on top of your cardstock. So this is the Thinlit die set that comes along with this Left You to Pieces stamp set. I've stamped my image. I've got the adhesive on the back. I'm just going to line that up in the center of the image. Add a little washi tape. Okay, this has been run through the Big Shot, and you'll see now that I've got 4 separate little pieces, and they all have adhesive on the back. I'll take my sponge and just accent the edge of these pieces. When I put them together without sponging color, it was very hard to see the fact that it was a puzzle piece, and that was kind of a cool aspect of it, so I wanted to make sure that on the next one I actually showcased that. Okay, so on my card I am making this puzzle piece heart be on this flap here. And I'm going to flatten it out just because it's easier to work with if it's flat. But I want to show you this. Just going to peel the adhesive off. And I'm going to put it angled on purpose. That just helps where you don't have to be quite as precise about getting it lined up seam-wise. Okay, now when I put this in here, when I stick this down, this is sticky, it's going to be stuck. So what I'm going to do is get part of the adhesive off. I'm just bending it back on the back, but not the part that's going next to that one. I'm going to get it lined up next to that one, press it down so this part where I already removed the adhesive is off, and then I've got that little tab. Then I can lift and place the rest of it. Last piece down on the edge, pull that part up. Finished card again. And you see on this one, I just sponged the one edge. And after I did that, I said, oh, I really need to sponge all of them. So you can see that has a little more color. So there are our two options for this card.